Thank you very much. Well, I just want to say good morning and welcome to Church at the Springs, man. I'll tell you right now, thank you for coming to church on this particular Sunday. You all are the very best, and what a joy it is for me to be back with you again on this particular Sunday. Last time I was here, it was at the end of January of this very calendar year, and I'm just going to tell you all right now, there are no two people that I respect, admire, honor, and appreciate more than I do Ron and Teddy Sylvie. I just got to give it up for them. Yeah, give it up. That's right. That's right. You know, and Ron's a friend, but he's more, okay? I learned from Ron. Ron continues to push me to be the best version of myself that I can possibly be. There's a Bible verse that I believe really literally encapsulates who Ron is for me, and it's Proverbs 27:17, where it says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And Ron has been that sharpening friend in my life over these past years. I deeply appreciate him for it. People say often you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, hey man, I just turned 64 years of age. I'm old, okay? I'm old, but I'm continuously learning. And it's a friend like Ron that propels me to be even better. And it's so good. I got to tell you, it is so good to be with you all. In fact, let me set up this week this way. Even though I was born and raised in the state of Ohio, in a city by the name of Port Clinton, Ohio, was literally there for 22 years of the first part of my life. I've lived now for the last 41 years of my life in Orange County, California. Now, I know as soon as you say California to a bunch of Floridians, it's like, get out of here, you know, like that kind of thing. So I just wanted to let you all know, I'm a farm boy from Ohio. Still got a lot of Midwest in me, okay, just so we're clear. And we all know that Disney World is here in Florida, right? Yeah, we all know that Walt Disney began his Disney empire in California with Disneyland. And so for 30 years of the 41 years, I've actually lived in Costa Mesa, California. In fact, I continue to live in Costa Mesa, California. And just like Ron is the founding pastor of this amazing church called Church at the Springs, I'm the founding pastor of the church I planted and founded 35 years ago. In fact, this September will be the 5th anniversary of my handing off that church to a new, young, amazingly gifted leader. In fact, the Crossing Church is the name of the church, and that church is doing so very well. My wife and I now, we attend the church, we serve in the church, we continue to give to the church, we have no official leadership responsibilities whatsoever. But during my years as the pastor of the Crossing, I very rarely traveled. Sure, once in a while, you know, a family vacation for us to go and see my parents who are in Port Clinton, Ohio, or Sue's parents, my wife, whose parents made their way south to Charleston, South Carolina. However, traveling to the point where I was on an airplane a whole bunch, just didn't really do it all. But my role now with this organization called Stadia Church Planting, I get to serve men and women and boys and girls, literally, who start brand new churches all over the United States. And I just want to say again, thank you, Church at the Springs, for how you partner in starting brand new churches all over this country. Give it up for yourselves. Way to go. Way to go. But I'll tell you, man, it means I'm on a lot of planes these days. And one of the best things about where I live is the airport is only 7 minutes, maybe 10 minutes max from my house. And for some of you who have flown into Orange County Airport, you might know it's also called what? Say it out loud. What is it? That's right, John Wayne Airport, okay? That's the logo of John Wayne Airport. In fact, his statue is right smack in the middle of the airport. It's really kind of a pretty cool statue. For some of you who are a little bit younger here, okay, this morning, okay, John Wayne was a real dude. In fact, he was a movie star. How many of you, show of hands, how many of you have heard of John Wayne? Raise your hands. Whoa, okay. How many of you have actually watched a John Wayne movie all the way through? Okay, that's a lot. So for those of you who are younger, just so we're clear, John Wayne was the Vin Diesel, the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson of his era, okay? Okay? And John Wayne had these quotes from some of his movies. And one of them was this, okay? Life is tough, but it's tougher when you're stupid. I like that. Life is tough, but it's tougher when you're stupid. And I want to tell you right now, my prayer for today is that we won't be stupid. Today, we're going to talk about a critical character trait for life, yours and mine. It's a character trait that I believe it marks the dude who we've been looking at in this series Among Lines now for the last 3 weeks. Joe, Mike, and last week Ron have done a fantastic job. And the guy that we've been looking at, his name is Daniel. And this trait was in him from the very earliest of days, continuing through his teenage years, all the way his whole life long. We see it right in the beginning in Daniel chapter 1:8. Look at what it says. It says, Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. Now, the word purpose means to plan or rehearse. It implies that he already decided how it was he was going to respond to the circumstances in life situations. He had a plan and he would not budge. And I'll tell you right now, if we would all learn to incorporate the character trait that we're going to talk about today that marked Daniel's life into our lives, it sets us all up for some real success. Okay, back to John Wayne and a quote from one of his movies titled True Grit, okay? There's a point in the movie where the 14-year-old kid says to the John Wayne character in the movie, hey, sir, they tell me you're a man with grit, true grit. And that's the focus of the message today, grit, true grit. John Wayne was a man with grit, true grit. Daniel was a man with grit, true grit. And I'll just admit this, I'm not the smartest person around, yet the character trait I prize more than just about any other is the character trait of grit. I would love for it to be said of me, Tim, they tell me you're a man of grit, true grit. And for all of you here who are listening to me today, those of you who are watching online right now in this service, I would hope that it would be said for every one of us. It's my prayer for all of you coming into this message this weekend that a whole lot of people would say about you, she is a woman of grit, true grit, or you're a man of grit, true grit. See, now dictionary.com defines grit, true grit, as a firmness of character and indomitable spirit. Now, indomitable is not a word we use often in our 21st century lexicon, right? But it means strong, resolute. It's that same idea from Daniel chapter 1:8. Daniel purposed. He was resolute. There was a book that was all the rage a few years back. The title of the book was Grit, the Power of Passion and Perseverance. Now, Angela Duckworth was the author of that book. In fact, her TED Talk still to this very day is one of the all-time most popular TED Talks. And Angela Duckworth, she has a quote from that book after studying all these thousands of people. She says it this way. She says, one characteristic emerged as a significant predictor of success. Now, show of hands. Right now, Church at the Springs, those of you online, show of hands. How many of you here would like to be successful? Raise your hands. Raise your hands. That's what I thought. And I don't know, for some of you it's success in marriage. For some of you it's success in your finances. For others of you it's success in your vocation, your career, your life's work. For others of you, it might be success in parenting, success in friendship, success in your relationship with Jesus. Well, I'll tell you something right now. As somebody who's standing on this stage talking to you, I want success for every one of you. For every one of you. Now, look at this. It says one characteristic emerged as a significant predictor of success. And it wasn't social intelligence. It wasn't good looks, physical health, and it wasn't IQ. Everybody say out loud with me what you see on the screen there. It's what? Say it. It's grit. It's been said that you don't determine a man or a woman's greatness by their wealth, their education, or their talent. You determine a person's greatness by what it takes to stop them. When I started the Crossing Church in the fall of 1988, I got to tell you right now, there were no books on church planting. There were no 8-tracks or cassette tapes, okay? The story of how we launched the crossing would make you cringe. And if you knew the story, you'd immediately question, hey, Tim, how is it that that church you launched even survived? After all, we didn't launch it in a growing sector of Orange County, California. Costa Mesa was already built out. But I tell people all the time as I look back, I always say, along with the Spirit and the power of God, there were a handful of women and men who had grit. Terry Lee and Ian Stevenson, Dan and Eva Stewart, Brett and Patrick Decken, Debbie and Rob Collette, Dale and Dawn Winson. Now, I realize you don't know these folks, but together, we purposed in our heart. We were focused and determined enough where we were on a mission for God. And you know what? Many of us stayed together for 20, 23, 25, 27 years. We would not quit. We had grit. But you know what? Church of Springs, you've had the same kinds of folks. I mean, I think, sure, Ron and Teddy Sylvia, but then there's Duke and Becky Haygood. There's Brian and Krista Perotti. There's Lauren and David Owen, Nicole and Charlie Parker, Chip and Heidi Dinkins, and the Haygoods and the Perottis and the Dinkins and the Owens and the Parkers. They were purposed and resolute to believe in a big God. And it's gritty women and men like them who have made the amazing church that this church is here today. And I got to tell you something. After reading an article that was in the Village Daily Sun where it said Church at the Springs is coming to Middleton, I started thinking to myself as I was on stage this week, who of you that are listening to me right now today in the room and online, you're going to be those people who someone is going to be speaking to you 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20, 25 years from now, including your names from this stage. Because of your grit and your perseverance and your determination over these next years, you're going to take this church to even greater heights. And that fires me up, I'm telling you. Okay, I got to tell you something. Paul, you may not know who Paul is. He wrote a great deal of what we call the New Testament portion of the Bible. Well, you got to know something. His life circumstances were very similar to Daniel. No, he didn't experience a fiery furnace or a lion's den. But look at 2 Corinthians chapter 4, what he says about this very topic. Hey, we're pressed on every side by troubles, but we're not crushed and broken. We're perplexed, but we don't give up and quit. We're hunted down, he says, but God never abandons us. We get knocked down, but we get up again. And I would add again and again, and we keep going. There are people that have this ability to stay at it, to never quit. They keep on keeping on. They've got grit, perseverance, persistence, determination. It's grit. And so when you look at the all-stars in the Bible, people like Daniel and Paul, you'll discover that they're ordinary people like you and me. They just have an extraordinary amount of determination. They simply don't know how to quit. They had grit. Let's look at Daniel 1:8 again. Look what it says. It says Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. In other words, what it's saying is Daniel determined ahead of time that come what may, he would stay the course for what God laid out before him. And in the first 3 weeks of this series, we know that a lot came his way. But Daniel never veered off course. Why? Because he had grit. And the question that you and I have got to ask ourselves here on this particular occasion is, are we determined enough? Are we determined enough to stay the course that God has laid before us? Or do we have a plan B in the back of our minds? And I'm telling you something right now. As long as there's another option that lingers in the back of your mind, you will not have the character that this life requires of you. When our character is tested, when we're in the proverbial furnace or the lion's den in our finances, our marriage, our parenting, our friendships, our jobs. See, grit is what will determine whether or not you pass the test. It's like that old statement. You may have heard it when you were in school. I certainly did in my school. Quitters never win, and winners never quit. So let me ask you a question. Do you finish things you start? If I took it in a multiple choice, usually, always, sometimes, never. Do you finish things you start? Usually, always, sometimes, never. Do you find it easy to get discouraged? Usually, always, sometimes, never. Would people say that you have the ability to hang in there? Here's a pointed question. As you look back over your life, what is it that at this particular juncture you wished you'd never given up on? Wished I'd never given up on school. Wished I'd never given up on piano lessons. Wished I'd never quit that promising career. Wished I wouldn't have quit that relationship. I mean, we all know there's a huge cost to quitting in the moment. It seems the thing to do, yet there's a cost to giving up. And we all know it, that it's not so important how you start the race of life that counts. It's how you finish up. And so quite possibly the best definition of grit is that grit is doing what you don't want to do. Let me pause right there. At an audience this size, I'm not sure what you all know about Jesus, but there was a time where he knew he was going to be killed. And in that moment, he actually said to his dad, "Hey, Dad, if you can stop that from happening, I sure would appreciate it." Grit is doing what you don't want to do, but you do it anyway, to be what you want to be. So what does it take to have grit? 4 things. If you're taking notes today, take a snapshot of the screen, text yourself, I don't know, but these are 4 important things. Number 1, grit is the ability to have a terrier-like tenacity. A terrier-like tenacity. Man, I remember when I was a little kid, there was this dog that I was extremely scared of. This dog wasn't all that big. It was sort of like a terrier or something. I mean, it had this mean face. It had hair that hung over its eyes, okay? It made that dog look foreboding. This little dog was something else. When that dog would get something in its mouth, he displayed extreme tenacity. If that dog had something in his mouth, he would not let it go. He would tenaciously grip that thing in his mouth and he would growl. And my friend, whose dog it was, we would put something in his mouth intentionally and then swing the dog in circles, okay? But he'd never let go. I found this in preparation for this message about terriers. Terriers are a group of dogs. These dogs have some common traits, including the fact that they're almost always tenacious at whatever task life has handed them. In other words, this breed of dogs has grit. God says this about tenacity. Hebrews 10:36, look what it says. It says you need to persevere so that when you've done the will of God, you will receive what God has promised. I looked up the meaning of persevere, and this is what it said. In the New Testament, it's the characteristic of a person who is not swerved. We don't use that word much. They're steadfast, who is not swerved from his or her deliberate purpose and loyalty to faith by even the greatest trials and sufferings. By the way, that would be Daniel. That's Paul. Is that you? Why should a person develop terrier-like tenacity? Well, the answer is found in the end of Hebrews 10:36, right? Because you'll receive what God has promised. Look at Galatians 6:9. This theme is all through the Bible. It says, "And let us not lose heart and grow weary and faint in acting nobly and doing right. For in due time and at the appropriate appointed season, we shall reap if we do not," what's the word? Say it. What is it? Loosen and relax our courage and faint. What's the key to reaping, to succeeding, to receiving? Like terriers, you don't loosen, you don't quit, you have grit. In fact, here's a little video that I saw on Facebook 2 weeks ago, but I guess it's been out for a number of years now. And let's all watch this together.
Stopping reunion that barely happened. The between this mama and her baby. The duo set out on a trek along a mountain. After both stumble a few times, the mom looks back at her little one before safely making it to the top. The baby, however, slips, falling down the side of the snow-covered cliff. But the determined cub doesn't give up. Desperate to reach his mom, he gives it his all. It just wasn't enough. He catches himself and tries again. Following in his mother's path, he almost makes it, but can't quite grab her paw and falls again, and not just a little bit. He uses the bare rock to gain his footing and is off again. His mom patiently waits at the top before the furry little engine that could joins his mama, teaching us all to never give up.
Oh, I guess clapped her at this service, right? Yeah, a lot of you are going, oh. You know, maybe you should have said like a bear cub-like tenacity, right? So, purposed in your heart, you will not quit. So that's the first thing. Number two, second most important thing for grit is demonstrated by the ability to be a finisher, I wonder how many of you here today have started a project, an assignment, or a job with just like a burst of enthusiasm, right? Only to be slowed down by an obstacle, a hurdle, or difficulty. And then eventually stopped short of your goal by continual obstacles, hurdles, and difficulties. Well, Daniel's in the fiery furnace at possibly the age of 15 to 17 years of age. And then in the lion's den, we learned from Ron last weekend that somewhere between age 75, 76, or 77 years of age. No, but that dude just kept on keeping on. In fact, if you haven't read the book Great by Choice, it's a must read. The key idea is what the author Jim Collins calls the 20-mile march. And he describes it like this: the strength of a person's character, their grit, and drive to success is determined by whether or not they can finish what they started, no matter the hurdles, obstacles, and or challenges. And you talk about the ultimate finisher, no matter the obstacle, that'll be Jesus. And Jesus says in John 4:34, he says, my nourishment comes from doing the will of God and from what? Finishing his work. Jesus was a finisher, not a quitter. Now, when I think of point two, I scroll back through my life. There's a story that comes to my mind. I was 15, 16 years of age. I was on the high school baseball team. I had been part of a baseball team since I was third grade. I was on multiple all-star teams. I was on the travel baseball team. In fact, the travel baseball team coach was my coach when I got to high school. He recruited me. He told me my entire time that I was the best catcher he ever had. And he said those things to me for like 4 years running. Then my junior year of high school, suddenly I found myself for the very first time, my name wasn't on the lineup card. When the game started, there I was on the bench. I'd never sat on a bench in any sport. I got moved up to first string varsity football when I was a freshman in the state of Ohio. And we all know that Ohio football is way better than Florida's, okay? Way better. Just had to throw that in there to see if anybody was still awake, okay? So for my freshman year, I'm the starter in football. Wrestling, my freshman year, I beat out a senior for the starting position, and I held that position all 4 years of high school. Then baseball as a freshman, starting catcher. The streak continued, football, wrestling, baseball, until the fourth game of my junior year of high school. Now I'm sitting on the bench. Next game, same thing, name not on the lineup card. I got frustrated and I did something that up until that point in my life was absolutely, completely, totally unthinkable. I didn't finish. I quit the team. And my dad said I would regret the decision. He was right, friends. He said something that I have never forgotten, so I put it as Dad Celek's quote. It says this: when you quit something, whatever that something is, it's always easier to quit the next time. I never forgot those words. When you quit something, whatever that something is, it's always easier to quit the next time. See, we have a unique society these days, don't we? It's almost like we applaud people now who quit things. Our culture's geared up for it. Most people these days would rather bail than blast through. A lot of people would rather leave than last. Some would rather throw in the towel than stay in the game. My friends, grit is the ability to endure, the ability to keep on keeping on. Grit is not stopping, it's not quitting, it's not giving up. In fact, Paul says in 2 Timothy 4:7, this is to his protege, Timothy. He says, I fought the good, worthy, and honorable, and noble fight. I have finished the race. A lot of people start strong, but do they stay strong? Stay strong in their marriage? Stay strong in their parenting? Strong in how we show up day in and day out at work as if it was our first day on the job? Strong in our friendships? See, grit is a big deal. So I got to ask you, do you have it? And then number three, grit is the ability to exercise emotional control over negative emotions. A person with true grit never gives in to the list of following emotions. Before I list them, let me just say this. There's a difference between being attacked by these emotions and allowing them to stop you. What are these emotions? Discouragement, anxiety, and fear. We all know discouragement. It's that feeling that happens to you when somebody doesn't do what they promised to do, or things aren't going the way you thought they would go, or somebody betrays you or talks smack about you. And here's what I've noticed. When humans like us are discouraged with negative emotions and circumstances and situations of life, it begins with discouragement. But once discouragement sets in, you get a little bit anxious. You worry. And that leads to fear. And then fear, you know it as well as I do, it builds, and it builds, and it builds in your marriage, your finances, your friendships, your job, you name it. I mean, can you imagine what it must have been like to be in the lion's den at night, lying on the den floor, hearing the breathing of those big cats as you laid there in the dark? But see, Daniel knew that fear wasn't from God. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, for God didn't give us a spirit of timidity or of cowardice or cringing or fawning fear. Another John Wayne quote on the topic of fear that I like, courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway. Or another person says it this way. I used to tell my staff that I had at the church for all these years, fear is wetting your pants. Courage is doing what you're supposed to do with wet pants. I like that. See, the progression of the devil is always discouragement, anxiety, and then fear. And then once fear sets in, oftentimes for many human beings, it paralyzes you. You stop, you quit. There is no grit. Daniel had the ability to exercise emotional control over undoubtedly negative human emotions. I've got to ask you, do you? And then the last point that it comes out of this previous point is that grit is the ability to choose into the power of an optimistic outlook. An optimistic outlook. See, here's the deal, friends. You and I choose whether or not we're going to be optimistic. You choose whether you're going to allow rejection or setbacks or temporary failures to sour you, control you, or push you into retreat. There's this fable about two twin 6-year-old boys. Each of the boys had developed extreme personalities that worried their parents. One of the twins was an optimist, like happy all the time. The other twin was a total pessimist, crying and whining all the time. And the parents were so concerned about the difference in their twins' behavior, they took them to a psychiatrist. So the psychiatrist treated the pessimist in trying to change his outlook as a 6-year-old. The psychiatrist took him into a room filled with brand new toys. But instead of being filled with excitement, the little 6-year-old just burst into tears. And the psychiatrist asked him, because he was baffled by the kid's response, what's the matter? Don't you want to play with any of these brand new toys? And the kid just sobbed, yeah, but if I did, I'd only break them. Well, the psychiatrist then turned his attention to the extreme optimistic 6-year-old twin. He was trying to dampen his outlook. So the psychiatrist took him into a room filled with horse manure. And here's what happened. Instead of the kid walking in holding his nose, the optimistic kid walked into the room and squealed with excitement, which is how he thought the pessimistic brother would respond to the room with brand new toys. However, while in the room filled with horse manure, the 6-year-old optimist literally walked in and climbed to the top of the pile of poop. dropped to his knees and began cheerfully digging out scoop of manure. And the psychiatrist was baffled by what the kid was doing, and he said, "What do you think you're doing?" And here's what the boy said. He said it with a smile. "With all this horse poop, there's gotta be a pony in here somewhere." Friends, I'm telling you right now, that little fable teaches us a lesson. Remember Daniel 1:8. You want to know the principle behind that verse? Do you want to know the secret behind Daniel's grittiness? Here it is. Your inward disposition will always determine your outward outlook. You can't let what's happening around you affect what's living in you. That's important. Going to say it again. Say it again. Your inward disposition will always determine your outward outlook. You can't let what's happening around you affect what's living in you. Whether that's a fiery furnace as a teenager or a lion's den as a senior adult. In fact, look at Paul in 2 Corinthians 11. He says they say they serve Christ, and he goes on to describe what he had to experience. I sound like a madman. I've worked harder, been put in jail more often, been whipped times without number, and faced death again and again. Then look at this, 5 different times the Jews gave me 39 lashes. By the way, I don't know what you know about Jesus. Jesus only got 39 lashes one time, and that was before he was crucified. This guy, 5 times. 5 times, 39 lashes. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I've lived with the weariness and pain of sleepless nights. But then in verse 31 at the end of it all, look at what he says. He says this, God the Father of our Lord Jesus, he is to be praised forever. In other words, let me put it in my words. Your circumstances do not determine your destiny. They just reflect your current location, what you're doing or not doing at this particular moment. So it really comes down to outlook. Let me say it again. Success isn't determined by talent, money, or education. Success is determined by grit. And my prayer for you this day, my prayer for all of you this day, is that you would be a gritty person. One who has the ability to display terrier-like tenacity. One who demonstrates time and time and time again that you are going to finish what you start. And one who remembers you have the ability to have emotional control over normal, numerous, negative human emotions. And you can choose into exhibiting a positive outlook, no matter the circumstance or the situation of life. So what will it be for you? Quit or have grit? Let's pray. Let's pray. With all of your heads bowed, could you all just bow your heads right now? I don't know who's in the audience, but let me just ask it this way. And just listen. Some of you, your marriage is at a place where you're teetering, you want to throw in the towel. Some of you, your job, you're teetering, you're wanting to throw in the towel. For some of you, there's some friendships you want to give up on. For others of you, you're children of you have adult parents now, and you just don't understand, and you want to let go. You want to quit. You want to quit. You want to keep on keeping on in that relationship. For some of you as parents, you're at your wits' ends with an adult daughter or adult son, and you want to quit. I could go on and on. I don't know what your circumstance or situation is here today, but I want to pray for you. If there's somebody who's on the edge and the ledge of wanting to throw in the towel, to give up, to quit, in any circumstance of life right now, and this message was an encouragement for you, would you right now, heads bowed, would you raise your hand? I want to just pray for you. Would you raise your hand? Raise your hand nice and high. Lots of hands. Thank you. Put your hands down. God, I just pray for every person whose hand's raised. I don't know who they are. I don't know what's going on. You see the intimate, most deep part of who and what is now transpiring. And God, my prayer would be that today there was something from your word or my human words that will help them stay in the game a day, a week, a month, a year, and then year over year longer. We'd keep on keeping on. That we'd have grit. You know what, friends? There's others of you who are in the audience. Keep your heads bowed. There's others of you who are here in the audience today, and you don't realize that Jesus will never quit on you, and you've not as of yet established a relationship with Jesus, but you're sitting here today and you know you came to church for a reason, or you've been coming to church at the Springs for a number of weeks now, and you've heard, whether it was Joe or Mike or Ron at the end of the message say, would you like to give your life, your heart to Jesus? Well, today's your day. Don't walk out here today without doing just that. So right now, if you'd like to give your life to Jesus Christ, would you just raise your hands? Just raise your hand nice and high so I can see it. Nice and high, please. That's it. Just think, I see that. Keep it up so I can see them all. Thank you so very much. You can put your hands down. I just want you to pray a simple prayer with me right now. There's a lot of hands that went up. Would you just pray this prayer with me right now? Just say, Jesus. Just say the name. You don't have to say it out loud, but just right where you sit, say, Jesus, I don't know all there is to know about you, but what I'm beginning to see here in and through this church, I let go of my life and I give my life to you today. I thank you for not quitting on me. Just tell them that. I thank you for not quitting on me, even to the point of dying a horrible death on my behalf. Just say that, even to the point of dying a horrible death on my behalf. And so today, as I sit here, I say to you, Jesus, I'm sorry for my stupidity, for my mistakes, for my, yes, even sinful actions. And today I give you my life. Just say that to him. Today I give you my life. And I'm going to just say to you right now, if you prayed that prayer, there's a lot of hands that went up. If you prayed that prayer, there's a party going on in heaven for you. You need to know that. And you also need to know Jesus will never give up on you. God, today, when we walk out of here and we go our separate ways into this next week, will we be men and women and boys and girls who keep on keeping on, blasting through, lasting, not quitting because we have grit. I pray this now in Jesus' name. Everybody said? Amen. Thank you very much.